All right, everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about Tszyu because he's arguably in one of the biggest fights of his career. I know it's not a title fight. I know it's not a unification fight. I know it's none of that. But in terms of where Tszyu is in his career, I don't think there is a fight that he can afford to lose less than this one, if that makes sense. You know, you can lose a title fight. You can lose in a rematch to a title fight. But when everybody's writing you off and you want to rebuild your career, this isn't the fight that you can lose. This is the fight where you lose and you are written off by each and every single person because, no offense to Anthony Velazquez, but a former world champion, a person that wants to be world champion again, deals with this challenge. Now, we are going to talk about Anthony Velazquez, but we're going to start with Tszyu because it's a huge fight. It's a huge fight because of the past 18 months. It's a huge fight because of the past 18 months, the two losses to Fedorov and the loss to Barkman Murtazaliev, and the way in which some of those defeats had fallen. All right, there was calls for Tszyu to change his team before the first Fedorov fight. There was question marks why he would fight Fedorov on short notice, not because he was scared of Fedorov, but because Fedorov is such an anomaly to the division. You know, we're talking about a guy that stands 7 inches taller than everybody else, has such a longer reach than everybody else. It's the type of fight that you go in on 7 days' notice and lose. And he didn't lose. I actually thought, in all circumstances, because of the cut and everything else, Tszyu was the better fighter on the night, you know. The second one is a completely different story, and we all saw how that unfolded, but that was also post an absolute beatdown in 3 rounds to Barkman Murtazaliev, where we saw Tszyu hit the canvas 3 or 4 times. And when you stack all of this on top of each other in the whole team scenario, it was a tough 18 months, and we've seen how much effect that has had on Tszyu. We've seen the fact that he has basically gotten rid of his whole entire team. These are people that he's grown up with and that he's friends with. So it's a big decision to say to all of them, I've got to let you go, because these aren't just strangers. These aren't just people that you met at 26, 27 years of age. These are people that he probably knew from 16 or 17 years of age. So for Tim to then also move away from his wife, train in Miami under Dr. Pedro Diaz, it's clear that his mentality is set, that he wants to become world champion, because a person that isn't motivated, a person that doesn't want to achieve, doesn't do all of those changes. He sticks with it, takes the wins, takes the losses, moseys through it, and says by the end of his career, well, it is what it is. Whereas this is somebody that I think is completely motivated to rebuilding his career, which is an odd thing to say about a 31-year-old, because most 31-year-olds don't become world champion at 27, 28 years of age, have a few title fights, have a few big losses, and then have to rebuild their career. This might be something that happens at 34, 35 years age, when you are starting to age and you're starting to lose it and you want to change everything up. But for Tszyu, we won't know if these changes work until Wednesday, and I actually don't think it'll show before 2 or 3 fights. You know, I expect him to beat Anthony Velazquez. All right, there is question marks over whether Dr. Pedro Diaz is the right guy. He might not be the right guy, and Tszyu might realize that come Wednesday and in his next fight camp, choose somebody else to work with. But we're not going to know whether Tszyu and Dr. Pedro Diaz work until we see 2 or 3 great performances in a row. Not good performances, not squeak by, not this, not that. It's you beat Anthony Velazquez, then you step up and you beat that guy, then you step up and you beat that guy. Then you're in a conversation of, are you in for an IBF Intercontinental, WBO Intercontinental belt? Are you in for an interim belt? Are you talking about fighting your Israel Madramovs? Are you talking about fighting even a step up from that? That's when we're going to see whether this whole change of outlook for Tszyu works or not. Because for me, if we talk about Anthony Velazquez, 18 victories, 0 losses, 1 draw, but his best win of his career is probably Yusuf Mitu. And Yusuf Mitu isn't a great fighter. He just got stopped a month ago. Like, Anthony Velazquez, he's a bit of a workhorse. I'll give him that. But you look at his resume, and there's no comparison between Anthony Velazquez and Tszyu. All right, level of opponent, way he's dealt with it. Tszyu is levels upon levels upon levels upon levels of what Anthony Velazquez is. Even though you look at the past 18 months and Tszyu's had a few ass kicks, he's still, in my opinion, levels on top of Anthony Velazquez, not just in ability, but also in experience and in resume. He's above Anthony Velazquez in every asset, and I expect Tszyu to show that, a bit like he showed against Joey Spencer, and a bit like Joey Spencer, although he dominated him, it didn't answer the questions of what is Tim Tszyu now, because we saw that beaten Joey Spencer did not have any impact on the fight against Fundora in the rematch. All right, probably shouldn't have taken the rematch. All right, but you can't change that now. He's changed the team and the people that's making those decisions for him and with him, but you can't reflect upon that now. And for me, Anthony Velazquez is arguably worse than Joey Spencer. All right, there's no real. The only difference is Joey Spencer had a loss coming into the fight against Tim Tszyu. Anthony Velazquez doesn't. But I can't even remember who Joey Spencer lost to. He did lose to somebody of note. Who was it that Joey Spencer lost to? He lost to Jesus Alejandro Ramos Jr., which would have been a middleweight contest. So, I mean, it's a very good person to lose to. Whereas you look at Anthony Velazquez and his career, the only blemish on his career is a draw a few years ago against someone that you would look at and say, you have to beat. Rashid Stevens, back in 2023, a resume of 6 wins, 1 loss, and 1 draw. And this is the guy in 8 rounds that Anthony Velazquez was unable to defeat. And then you look past that. Mario Bustos, 7 wins, 9 losses. Daniel Sostre, 13 wins, 25 losses, 1 draw. 10-1, 14-6, 11-1, 12-3-1. Well, some of those are an improvement, but they're not terrific fighters. They're not going to compete with the people that Tim Tszyu has beaten in his career. You still learn stuff from fighting Fundora and Barkram. Obviously, he's learning them in defeat, not in victory, but you know, you look at his victories over Brian Mendoza, his wins over Tony Harrison. These are all things that are surpassing anything that's been on Anthony Velazquez's resume. And we know what Tim Tszyu offers. I did speak to him. There is an interview on this channel if you want to check it out. We're looking at a Tim Tszyu that has changed his whole regimen. He's changed his coach. He's talking about this is the first time since he was a little kid that he's fallen in love with boxing, which for a mentality standpoint is very, very important. And he said we're going to see some changes in this fight. What those changes are, we don't know. Whether that's being more tentative, whether that's being on the front foot, whether this is counterpunching. We don't know what Dr. Pedro Diaz and Tim Tszyu has been working for. All we know is whatever was happening before Dr. Pedro Diaz did not work. That is all we know coming into this fight. And come Wednesday, we'll see whether it did work. For me, though, I backed Tim Tszyu to win this fight in 4 or 5 rounds, depending on how tentative he is. If he starts it slow and wants to work in, I still expect him to get the stoppage. It'll just come a little bit later. I'd be surprised if this went to a decision. I'll put it to you that way. I'd be surprised if this went decision. I think Tim Tszyu needs to come out and make a statement, and when your opponent's not on your level, I think Tim Tszyu will show that. So that is my preview for that fight. We will talk about Sam Goodman. This video is going a bit long, so we'll try and be a bit quicker on Sam. Now, Sam's coming into this fight off the back of a loss to Nick Ball. Now, stepping up 1 weight division isn't a lot, but it is a step up, and the other step up was the fact that up until that point, the hardest fight for Sam Goodman was Cesar Vaca Espinoza, and moving up to fight Nick Ball, a certified champion, a defending champion, someone that's beaten people like Ray Ford, drawn with Ray Vargas, it was a tough test. It was a very tough test, and I thought he fought exceptionally well on your first step up, right? This was a completely new thing for Sam Goodman, fighting overseas, fighting for a world championship against someone that is highly rated by a lot of people, someone that lots of people want to see fighting Naoya Inoue. So for Sam Goodman, it's a loss. I think that might be a bit of a monkey off his back. He now comes into this fight against Tyler Blizzard with all that experience, and there's really no fear, in my opinion, of losing your own. It's gone now. Move on. You know, lots of people, 20 victories, 21 victories, still undefeated. There's a bit of maybe complacency. There's a bit of tentativeness of wanting to not lose that O, and sometimes that can play against you. Sometimes it can very much work for your benefit because you have that mentality of, I can't be beaten. Obviously, he doesn't have that now, but I think everything that he learns from that fight will be shown in this one. And like I said, he fought very well. This was a unanimous decision loss, but you watched that fight and you gave Sam Goodman a good 4, 5, you're probably pushing for 6 rounds, but it was a very competitive fight. And I think if you gave Sam Goodman Nick Ball again it would be an even closer fight. If not, Sam Goodman might do enough to win. It is a very good champion in Nick Paul, and lots of the talk coming into this fight has been, oh, well, Tyler Blizzard 10 years ago beat Sam Goodman in amateurs. Well, a 3-round contest in amateurs 10 years ago, for me, has very, very little impact on what's going to happen in this fight. Like, I'm talking basically fuck all. Because since then, we're looking at Sam Goodman, 20 victories, going into world title fights, preparing for Naoya Inoue, training with some of the best people in the world, preparing for some of the best people in the world, compared to Tyler Blizzard, who is 10-0 and really hasn't been tested anywhere near that level that Sam Goodman has. So, yeah, you beat him in amateurs, but for me, it has no impact on this fight. And I think Sam Goodman will show his class and show that experience against Tyler Blizzard and hand Tyler Blizzard his first loss of his career. Also on the card, we have Callum Peters versus Cody Beacon. This is for the Australian middleweight title, vacant title. Callum Peters, a bit of an odd one for me. Obviously, Olympian. I don't know if he's planning on going to the next Commonwealth Game or Olympics, because he's got 4 victories professionally, but he still fights amateurs. Like, he fought in September in Liverpool in the World Championship amateurs. He then comes back and wins the Australian Elite Amateur Championship. But I never like these fighters that go in and out of amateurs because they are so different. I think at 23 years of age, if you're committed to professional boxing, I think you put everything into your professional boxing. You start taking step-ups. You start having fights that up until this point, Callum Peters hasn't been in. I mean, he's been in 4 fights. He's won them all by knockout and all in the first round. It's great for the resume. It's great to be saleable, but what avenue are we taking here? Are we taking, we need to see you knock out 10 opponents in the first round in a row and get to a point where all of a sudden you're in a very, very tough fight that you're not experienced for? I get it. It is hard to find opponents in Australia. I get that. It's not easy. The depth in some divisions is not there. So for Callum Peters, he might be struggling to find fights, and maybe he still does want to achieve at amateur level. For me, I saw a person at the boxing championships in Liverpool that tried to fight amateur as a professional. That's what I saw. I saw somebody that knocked 4 people out in a row and thought he was going to do that in amateur game. It's not. It doesn't work that way. It's completely different. And he got found out a bit in that tournament. And I think for me, he's got to pick an avenue. I'd like to see him pick an avenue. We saw Jaya Pattaya. Jaya Pattaya, he goes to the Olympics at 17 years of age, is unsuccessful, moves on with his life, starts professional, and we see where he is now at 29, 30 years of age. At 23 years of age, you start committing professionally. At 26, 27 at the latest, we could be talking about you in a title fight. He is in middleweight. It's not the hardest division in the world currently. All right, there are some big boys at the top end, but in the middle, it's a bit lackluster. I'd like to see Callum Peters really push for it, because I think I've seen enough in his fights, although short, over 130 amateur fights. There is something there that this guy can become a world champion. And like I said, I'd just like to see him commit to one or the other. I don't want to see him in, when's the next Olympics? 2028? Doesn't really fucking matter what year, but I think it's 2028. In 2028, when he is 25, 26 years of age, still chasing a gold medal, when I feel like he could be really putting his hand up for a world championship. Now, it comes down to what he wants to achieve in his life. Maybe he does want that gold medal and that means something to him. And if so, then back it. Go for it. If it's just about trying to make up for something that you feel a bit shitty about because you didn't achieve in the last Olympics, I think let it go. I think let it go, because yeah, you might get redemption and win a medal in the next one, or, you know, you can just put that behind you and say, no, I'm going to go and win a world championship. It's all led down to him. Like I said, I haven't spoken to him. I don't know what his wants are, but for me, I see someone that I believe can become a world champion and become a very, very, very notable Australian boxer. And I'd like to see him achieve that. And I just don't know if he achieves that if he's dipping his toes in each end of the pool. All right, amateurs and professional. But he is coming up against Cody Beacon, 8 victories, 2 losses. Look, I expect it to be a good night for Callum Peters. Ahmed Redder's taking on Wayne Telepi for the Australian lightweight title. I actually think this is an easier fight than his fight against Bruno Tarimo. That was a tough fight. I actually thought the cards were going to be closer than what they were. In the end, Ahmed Redder won quite convincingly and became super lightweight champion. He's an exciting young guy, Ahmed Redder. He's a very, very exciting guy, and I expect him to show just how good he is against Wayne Telepi. And I think that's just about it. Jason Fawcett versus Marco Romero. That's a very close fight. I actually wouldn't have a clue who would win that fight. I haven't watched Marco Romero fight before. I'd seen Jason Fawcett fight twice before. He works very closely with Sam Goodman, which is a very good stablemate to have. Everybody coming out of that complete boxing gym at Gosford. Paulo Acuso, another Olympian. His brother won on the undercard of Jaya Patai versus Sin Cara. Paulo Acuso, 28 years of age, 8 wins, 4 knockouts, 0 losses. He's coming up against Shukarat Abdullayev, 35 years of age, 5 victories. That's odd. I have no idea who he is, and I expect Paulo Acuso to beat him quite convincingly. Yeah, I think that just about rounds out the card. There is a few other fights on there, but we're not going to get into it because this video has already gotten way too long. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. I will be making some videos later in the week talking about the Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua card. So if you are new, please do subscribe. We are pushing for now 400 subscribers. I can't believe that we reached 300 by the end of my first year on this channel, which is unbelievable. And big thank you to everybody that has subscribed, that does watch the content, that likes, comments. It is greatly appreciated. I do try and engage with everybody that does leave a comment on the channel. So yeah, if there's anything else you guys want to see on this channel, do let me know. But for now, that is all. See yous.